model our labs as creative parents. In addition to being creative professors and trying to be people who use and employ creativity as much as possible. And one of the things I think we're going to talk about as a fairly strong theme in what we're talking about today is this idea of identifying as creative. What does it mean to say creative or not creative? Because many people have some trouble identifying as creative, saying that they're creative, admitting to it, or sometimes even feeling strange to do so. Maybe it's seems to them like they're overstepping their boundaries to say, "Oh, I'm a creative person." Is it like saying you're a good kisser, or whatever? Is that something maybe you don't get to claim for yourself?
That's even tougher.
So you could be getting the label from another authority, a teacher, a parent, or community member or something.
Do you notice this more in teachers? I've seen this notice in teachers. Oh, I'm just teaching. I'm not doing anything special here, or I'm not doing anything.
Absolutely, and they are actually creative. They have creative elements in what they do for their work and with their students, and they aren't identifying it as being creative.
I see it a lot. We do this experiential learning stuff on campus, and so I see all of the edge projects coming through that fit loosely into creativity. So that's running the gambit from entrepreneurial efforts, research efforts, art, performing art, writing, web design, social media, a lot of things fit in there. And so you see some struggles. You see some struggles for people in the sciences saying, well, I'm not creative, I'm in the sciences. And we're like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, let's not go there. And so I find that I sometimes have to put people through their paces to say it's okay to accept this label.
When I was applying for college, my college essay, I wrote about creativity and about how I wanted to study art because I'm really interested in being creative, unlike those sciences. And my dad is an engineer, and he read my essay and was highly offended and taught me.
I can just imagine how that went.
He said, what I do is creative, completely creative, and he kind of walked me through it, and I've learned since then that he's absolutely right. We've got a definition.
Yeah, the definition of creativity is a mouthful. And if people, I'll read it because sometimes it doesn't easily translate out there into the cyber world. Creative, and we're going to talk about creative thinking rather than creativity. There's a distinction that's important, and the most important, I think, for us is our essential learning outcome is called creative thinking, and not called creativity. But there's some stuff in the value rubrics from the AAC&U that talk about maybe why we don't just say creativity when we're in higher education. We focus on this creative thinking idea. But creative thinking is both the capacity to combine or synthesize existing ideas, images, or expertise in original ways, and the experience of thinking, reacting, and working in an imaginative way characterized by a high degree of innovation, divergent thinking, and risk-taking. So I'm sure that when that hit your ears, it went buzzword, 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 buzzword. We can kind of drill down through those. But I think that the thing that's most interesting to me is that ideas and images, yeah, people get that. But expertise, I think that's what's so interesting when we start to talk about the domains, the disciplines, the majors, when we start saying, what can you do within your domain or within your major to function creatively? So yeah, can there be a creative economist? Absolutely. By these terms, and we've also seen creative economists. Ditto people who are in technology, ditto people who are in the social sciences. Even if people aren't accepting that label for themselves, the language of the learning outcome is pretty specific about how and where you can apply this. And they assert in the 2 pages that come with the value rubric, and we've got copies here so you can kind of look at them. Hey, you've got to have competency in your domain to be creative. You can't just be creative with it being detached from anything else.
On the levels of higher thinking, creativity is right there at the end. After you understand and know and can teach other people, when you're synthesizing, you're using it really.
And so I guess that's where I would start. But if we use this kind of expansive definition of creative thinking, it's pretty easy for people to be a little bit reflective and to say, oh, well, I do that. I'm an innovator as an educator.
Yeah, I'm pulling ideas from my past and this new thing I've learned.
So that idea of that creativity can happen in an area of expertise. Innovation, yeah, people talk about that a lot. Divergent thinking, that actually comes up in these discussions a lot. Whether you're going to say, hey, let's come up with lots and lots of ideas, see how they play before we focus on one. Convergent thinking, that's something that we've talked about a lot. What doesn't get brought up a lot is risk taking. And so can a person be a creative person if they are risk averse? And the literature really says no. So imagine now the chain of logic. When people say to Alisa and I, various different kinds of, whether it's 5-year-old kids or whether it's teachers or whether it's students or whether it's faculty that I'm working with, when they say to us, I'm not creative, my logical chain is, oh, you're maybe not a risk taker. And that might be what they're identifying. And this isn't to be like, you're not a risk taker, but it may be in that area of risk aversion where people are saying, I just want to play it safe. I don't want to risk things. And you can read in Alfie Kohn's books, in Dan Pink's books on motivation, and on creativity. Pink's got 2 great ones. Worrying about the consequences of a project, an outcome, an activity, that's the thing that really shuts people down in their creativity more than anything else. And so we hear it manifested in this one thing. The fear of failure. What are the consequences of failure? If I fail, what? Will I be judged? Will, for us teachers, will this reflect negatively on my evaluations? Which I say kudos to the university for starting to work on ways to say, hey, I'd like to set this course aside, and my annual review is something I'm experimenting with, so that we get a little bit of time, because everybody knows, everybody from the creativity field knows, if you aren't setting yourself up in a context and an environment where people say, it's okay to blow it. I actually just left a student who was giving me a rundown on their Edge project. He was doing some stuff with Johnny McClain. He said, if I had one thing to do over on this project again, I would keep my lab book better. When they were talking about whether they were going to be using E. coli or these strep organisms to do some of the work, it's like, I should have documented that better. And so I think that's part of the whole thing, because scientists know this implicitly. Failure is great if you document it. There's so much learning that can happen from it. And it gets back to the old thing. It's important, though, and one message we wanted to get across before we move on to something that Alisa is going to talk about is, you'll probably remember this if you're a child of my age, creativity is not just for artists anymore. It's just like orange juice isn't just for breakfast. It's important for us as colleagues and as a couple trying to teach creativity out in the world that we get that across. The work, and Alisa can talk about this, the work that Alisa does with kids in elementary education for art isn't to create a bunch of artists. And I'm not involved in Edge projects to create a bunch of artists either. It's about how can people unlock their creative and innovative capacities so that they can go implement this cross-implementation in all kinds of walks and fields aspects of their lives.
Yep. So I've got this great book here, Developing Creativity in Higher Education, an Imaginative Curriculum. And this is an anthology. The introduction talks, the very first paragraph talks about how so many PhD candidates drop out at the dissertation stage, not because the work's too hard, not because they're too tired or exhausted. It's because they don't feel like they can come up with like, and that's because they've spent their whole education answering questions that other people set for them. And when we teach for creative thinking, include that in our courses and practice that ourselves, we are more prepared to find the questions and ask the questions and develop those problems. And that's what we want everyone to do in every field. So it's not just about creating a painting, it's about finding something and finding the solution.
And John Cleese, we all love John Cleese, right? From Monty Python. He's actually given quite a number of talks over the years, all the way back in the 70s on creativity. And one of the quotes that keeps popping up around John Cleese and creativity is, creativity is not a thing, but it's an approach and a process. And if it is an approach and a process, it certainly can be something that's taught. It's not an innate feature in somebody. But we're growth mindset people, so.
So as Todd said, I work with elementary children, and I work with elementary education majors, and I also work with practicing teachers in elementary schools. And I have a good friend who was an art teacher, and she said to me in confidence, she's been teaching art for years and years to elementary kids, and she said, I just don't think elementary children have the capacity to really be creative. And I was kind of floored and sad, and I've heard that as well from university professors as well. My students aren't good being creative. In readings that I've done where faculty have set up a project that they felt was a creative project that involved creative thinking, and their students totally failed it, totally bombed it. They say, well, they don't have the capacity. And that is not true. We're all born with a capacity. Sir Ken Robinson gave a great talk about how elementary children, 5 years old, were tested, and they had certain
genius level
parameters for creativity, and they were almost all genius level. And as they went through school, their level of creative genius tanked. And we talk in my classes about all the reasons, social pressures and self-editing and fear and doubt and this risk aversion, wanting to fit in. And the answer is that we all have that capacity, but it is actually a brain function. When you are practicing creative thinking, you're making new neural pathways. We know about brain elasticity. Your brain can grow, or it can kind of, what's the opposite of grow?
atrophy.
Yes, atrophy, exactly. And so when you're practicing this type of thinking over and over through education, and now as adults, you're changing the structure of your brain. So we all have this capacity, but we don't always practice it.
But is there a lack of creativity? Yeah. You go around everywhere, and they're like, where is it? What I think that Elisa's talking about, and what we're really trying to communicate here, and maybe get into a discussion about, is where to go.
Yep. And we'll talk a little bit about how my friend who was teaching elementary children and said her students did not have the capacity to be creative. What I believe was happening is she wasn't setting them up. She wasn't setting them up for success. When I have elementary education majors write lesson plans that need to be creative, what I see over and over again is they write in the lesson plan, let the students make their art any way they want. Use colored pencils and crayons and get out the paint, and it's too much freedom and too much choice. And that's our big mistake. When we try to push creative thinking, we just say, open all the doors. And that's not setting up our students to succeed in creativity. We have to practice the things that were involved in the creative thinking definition. And so I wanted to talk to you about something from this book by Fox and Schermacher, which is about creativity for really young children. They said this study of parents of children that really scored high on creativity tests, and they did home studies to say what's happening in that home that's helping these children be more creative. And some of the results were really surprising, some of them not surprising, but I think as professors we can use some of these capacities in our teaching with our own students. And so there's a lot. But what I love is that they model finding problems and solutions. They value divergent thinking that we talked about before, finding multiple answers. And this is one that I love the most. The children that are most creative, a lot of times both parents work outside the home. So why do you think that would be the case? How do you think that would help in those children being more creative? Their parents are less available to them. Any guess?
They're inquisitive of what's in the closet.
Right, they're left to their own devices.
Yeah.
They've got to fend for themselves. In our home, with our children, we say boredom is the gateway to adventure. Children who are allowed to get bored end up being more creative. With our students, if we are in their projects, if we're in their assignments, guiding them as they go every step of the way, they're not going to have that difficulty and have to figure it out for themselves. They'll be less creative.
And one thing that I say over and over again about the world, and it makes my wife want to throw up sometimes, is if you think about the activities of children, how many of them have the intercession of adults? Their sports are adult coordinated. Their music, theater, dance activities are adult coordinated. So I have thought all back, where Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney, like, let's go to the barn and put on a show. Like, that's not even sort of within the parameters of what kids do. Or let's just take our mitts, throw them on the handle of our bicycle and ride to the park and just play ball. It's all arranged in tournaments so that there are these structures in place that are supposed to be creating value for the students. Maybe they're going to be playing better ball or doing better musicals, but what are we stealing from them by being around all the time as adults. It's a really difficult question to ask as a parent. I think it's also a difficult question to ask as a teacher. When teachers are trying to figure out, when is it okay for me to walk away right now and let some disaster maybe happen? Or is it okay for me to walk away and let something blossom, something amazing, because I wasn't in the way? And I think that those are questions I don't think any teacher is going to, or parent is going to answer for themselves right away. I think it's going to be a struggle to figure out the right balance.
Yep. Some of the things that parents do as well is that they model components of creative thinking. They model wondering and observing. Oh my goodness, look at this caterpillar. I wonder where he's going. They model that stuff over and over. And so within our teaching, we need to model that as well. And we need to learn alongside of our students. That's another thing that parents with creative children do. They admit what they don't know, and then they ask questions together and learn together.
Can I tell a story?
Yeah.
One time my mother was making blackberry pie. We were from Oregon originally, so blackberries are everywhere. So she was doing a pie, and I heard an expletive emerge from the kitchen. And I said, "What happened?" And she says, "That's okay, I'm just serving this blackberry crumble." But that has always been an impact, and it's been an important family story, which is, did the pie get wrecked? Yes. Is it a great crumble? Yes. Yeah. So she was showing, you want to know what? There's a way to capitalize on an error. And I think that's been something that I know has been in my brain for a long time.
Yeah.
Also the expletives.
Yeah, that's very true. So I want to talk next about what are some of these things. Yeah, they go together. Let me turn this back on. There are some things that you can model with your students right within your courses that can help them practice these creative thinking abilities. Yes. So Shelley Carson is a psychology professor at Harvard, and she wrote a book, Your Creative Brain. And she has, let's see, 1, 2, 3. She's kind of isolated 7 areas of what she calls brain sets. These are components of creative thinking that are based. Some of these are on cardstock because we left them in there. But
I thought you were being creative.
I just wanted to be really high
quality.
This is
so Scott can erase a whole lot.
Yeah.
Well, these are areas of significant study that are components of creative thinking. And what she says is that quite a few of us have one of these that we're so good at and others that we really trip up on. And if we incorporate these types of thinking and working within our courses, we're going to help students find those areas where they're strong and then work on the areas where they need to improve. And it's so handy that it spells creates. But we're going to walk through them super fast. Connect. This is, you're able to think of tons of great ideas. You're able to connect really disparate ideas, methods, objects together. Reason. Somebody who's good at this one would be really good at executive function, planning, goal setting, making lists, calendaring. So imagine if you cannot do this at all. You might have a great idea, but bringing it to fruition doesn't happen. So you need this as well. Envision. This is actually where you can visualize something in your head. This is imagination. You're really good at kind of seeing that and noticing patterns. Absorb. You're able to see the world around you. Take in information, sounds, ideas, and notice things. Some people don't. They walk through and don't notice. But if you are able to be really aware and mindful of what's around you, you can find those problems or find questions that you can solve through creative thinking. Transform. And this makes me think of Todd, what he was saying about being risk averse. If in this one you have a dissatisfied or distressed state of mind, you see something that you want to change, you have this feeling that you need to express an anxiety or a hope, and you're motivated to make that change. So if you think everything's hunky-dory, you may be less creative than if you're trying to make a difference in the world. Evaluate. This is where you can take all of those divergent ideas, judge them with criteria, and eliminate some. Some people aren't able to get rid of ideas that aren't going to work very well. And then stream. This is when you're able to be in that flow state. You have the muse and it's just coming from you. Some people that comes naturally and some people it doesn't. And
I was going to say, and these aren't some sort of linear progression.
No.
They're of equal value. They're just organized this way so it spells creates.
Right, because it's handy. So we want to take a moment and have you do a little bit of quick writing and a little bit of self-evaluation. And I'd like you to just make notes on here where you think you're great and areas that are a little bit harder for you to naturally
And if it helps you to go like 1 to 10, I'm 1 to 10 in this area, or to do that and then leave a note that says, oh, I can think of a detail, we can have, this can help us have a conversation through the rest of the time.
Well, one thing too, I like really, no, you're great. One thing I really like about these is I'm going to use these as I provide feedback to my students, even in paper.
Absolutely.
I really love it. I can see you're connecting here. Going back to your teacher that maybe said, oh, these kids can't create. If she could at least have this vocabulary in her mind, I love it when you're envisioning where we're going to go in the future with this.
But
just
maybe,
using those words.
Right, and then she could see for herself, my students are doing this well, this is where they stumble, so this is where I can develop my curriculum to help them bridge this.
Because you talk a little bit about craftsmanship and how that gets mixed up with creativity.
Right, absolutely. They may have a great idea and not be able to bring it into fruition.
They may be able to be, and particularly at certain levels of skill in the domain, their craftsmanship or their demonstration of the skill in the domain is great, but they're still exhibiting creative things.
Let's let them write for just a second.
What are we writing now?
Evaluate yourself. Find where you feel like your strengths are and where you feel you could work, or things that don't come easily to you. Tony, we can give you these handouts for the people who are distant.
Thank you.
Yep.
We've got all this stuff digital if we want to set a little folder.
Right.
For people to get to.
That'd be wonderful. We'll put it out on our website too, so they can download it from there. Thanks.
If you finish, what we're going to do next is talk about your courses. So if you, anywhere on the paper that you want to, can see where these things, you're naturally already using assignments or teaching structures that use some of these. Mark those for us in some way. we'll just do maybe one more minute. Do you want to talk about this or do you want me to do it?
I'll do it.
Great.
As I approach this thing, I thought to myself, I'm not 100% sure if 10 means that you're awesome in these areas as well as maybe 1 not being awesome. That sometimes being overbalanced in one area may cause some trouble. So I thought maybe I would jump in with that and then see where people go. So I said, connecting. I'm a big connector. I can connect anything. And I discovered a problem with that in high school with the SAT, where I couldn't get the correct answer to the analogies because I could make them connect. Any of them. And so I wouldn't get them right. But I would sit down with the teachers at the time and I go, oh no, because this is to this is to that. See? And they're like, no, okay. We're really actually looking for an answer. And so I wonder too, is there areas where you're like, hey, I'm pretty good at that, but that's not always helping? Or if you've got other ways that you
I'm really good at being moody. I don't have the other side of that.
Way.
Yeah, I need to work on that at the other end of that being moody.
So it's okay to be, I see this thing needs to change, but then you've got to have maybe the reason to make a plan.
I put a 10 there, but I said I'd have to admit maybe an 8 or 7 would be better.
Yeah.
I said that for me, that one's manic. Like, I'm like, everything needs to be different and it has to be different right now. And then I burn out on it and I'm like, never mind. And thinking of myself as an instructor, like, I just get to a point where I'm like, we can't do this much change. Never mind. Let's just worry about apostrophes for a while. Or something. Like,
we can live in a house. We don't have to burn it down all the time.
And I went the other end. I have low number on mood, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm okay with that.
Right.
Like,
So you're the one that just
like, I'm like, it's fine. Everything's fine. I'm too content. Like, it's okay. But even then, I'm like, that's okay.
I don't feel like I need to increase.
Did anything surprise you when you put that down? When you were talking about this instrument?
That I was higher on. I don't necessarily think of myself as a creative person automatically, but when you help me break it down in these different ways, I'm like, yeah, I'm decent at that. I'm good at that. And, like, thinking of the different aspects of it.
Yeah, I think it's when you can get them to balance or to work in your favor. You say, okay, I know I've gotten these, but if I just get this one, then something is going to happen.
I can see the ones that I scored low in. I had this realization that that's why I try to surround myself with people that have those. I know that I'm bad with them, and so I need these people with me because I can do this really good, but I need them to finish this with me, and together we can do something pretty cool.
Todd and I think both of us are pretty good at connect and less good at reason. I like to plan in my head a lot, and so Todd has hired someone who is that's our number one thing. And I think that maybe in our home, we would probably go on more vacations and finish more home improvement projects if we had that one as well. A little bit stronger there.
I think it's such a good idea for team building, group building. Think about the power in the classroom if people were doing some kinds of assessments like this. You were kind of aware of it. We were putting groups together so that you didn't put a whole bunch of reasoners together.
But they don't have a good idea to
But
go
no vision.
move with. Yeah.
That kind of, with that, too many skills lumped in one area, and you're not going to be able to pull this off. But also, people need to understand that if anybody is like pegging to 10 on all sides of this, I wouldn't believe them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other surprises or in moments?
On the stream, I'm really good at it, but I don't engage in it very often.
I did the same thing. It's got to be the right thing.
It's like, yeah, I can do this, but I just don't take time to practice it.
Yeah, there's a great book. Do you remember who it was by? The Creative Practice, a choreographer, and she talks about having that daily practice, and where you're assigning time for that, and then that stream that may come to you when you need it, you get into that practice of it can be more regular for you.
Well, here's a little break that I think is really important. Jason Fried, who was one of the people who started Basecamp, project management software, he and some colleagues wrote a book called On Work. They started doing some research, and they said people report back over and over and over again that work is a terrible place to get anything done. They just said this over and over and over again, and the research backs it up. Because the stream is always interrupted. And even other kind of business and management people like Peter Drucker says, if you deep management stuff, you need 2 hours, 2.5 hours to set aside. And many of us in this environment feel like there is just no way to get that. And so I know myself, lots of other people hide. And it's great. I have a dean that gets it because I go hide and then I come back with about 3 different projects to problem solve. But it's like when you're in the stream where even if you don't get interrupted, I think of office hours for faculty members. It's not a time where you're like, I'm going to get something done, because you're bracing yourself for being interrupted. And it's fine because that's what it's for, but it's not for doing any deep work. So you might be able to piddle around and do something or add some columns up in a grade book, but not this kind of deep dedicated work that's important for that stream.
So I'd like to hear where you feel these categories fit into what you do in your class. Did any of you think about that?
Well, I certainly give my students assignments where I want them to connect different ideas, think about things different ways. And I've also given them assignments where they have to do a video or do a PowerPoint, so they have to engage their visual thinking.
I really work with mine on the envision. In all my classes, I have some component of problem-based learning. What's the problem you're addressing as a teacher right now? And what do you envision as potential, maybe solution is too strong of a word, interventions to address those?
Well, do you feel that connects with the transform as well, the mood, about getting them to recognize, notice, and feel the changing feeling?
They have to be aware of that. And part of that may be just listening to others, their peers or the principal or parents. And
so I work, like I said, with elementary education majors, and we do the absorb a lot. When we're, just this morning we worked with a bunch of toddlers at the museum, and we did a hands-on art and dance and music activity, and half of the class, their whole assignment was just watch, just notice, just take notes like crazy to see. And so I feel like that is a big part of what I do, is the more you can notice and see, then the more you'll be able to reflect and plan. Yeah.
One of the, I guess, things that causes dissatisfied or a distressed state is the design of, or the structure of our classes does not facilitate most of this very well. We're assuming that it's happening sometime outside of the classroom, but when you've got 50 minutes to get in the stream, they never actually get in the stream. And that's the one thing you're going to find in Jumpstart, and maybe you guys saw this, but we had this happen just last week where we had a couple things we were going to accomplish. But we started working, and the students got in the stream, and me and Eric went to the back and like, we can't break this up.
You know that this is a metaphor, right? It's not when they were down in science.
Yes. Okay. No, they were designed, they were coming up with lyrics for their We Didn't Start the Fire project, and they were just going, and we said, we gotta just let this keep going. And so I called the president, like, you're off. Don't come. And he's like, that's fine. Luckily it was him, but other professors would have been like, no, it's my turn. And it's like, don't break this, just let him go. We ended up letting him go for 2 hours.
I wonder too what a psychologist thinks about how much are we conditioned away from being able to do this, because we know the units of time that have been provided for us.
Yeah, and that's always the challenge, right? I mean, yes, the president didn't come in, but something might have been lost in him not coming in. And I think that's always the thing to look at. in terms of the cost benefit associated with these things.
So managers talk about this as a problem. Managing creative people is a huge issue, and it always has been, because a really, really valuable person on your team who's in the flow state may blow off a meeting.
Right.
Because, and then they're going to come back and say, that thing you asked me to make, it's like 3 times better than what you just asked me to make.
But
And
then
so,
you miss the meeting, yeah.
Yeah, that's the challenge with this stuff, right? I mean, that's the where the parameters associated with this, and then there are good ones, they're really good ones.
and so it's really, really hard, because in the value rubrics which are out there, one of the
Another side of the definition.
one of the capstones is transforms ideas or solutions into entirely new forms.
Right.
I mean, so what we're asking for is for them to not do what we asked. So as teachers, like, what happens when they do really sort of jump over that? So in a lot of ways, creativity is transgressive. And so when we're looking for an ordered or a regulated classroom, or an ordered or regulated curriculum or assessment program or whatever, this is such an interesting challenge. Extends a novel or unique idea, question, format, or product to create new knowledge, or knowledge that crosses boundaries. That sounds so great when you're talking about an assignment. It sounds so difficult when you're dealing with a student who didn't do what you asked.
That's what I mean by our structures are not set up in a way. And you might say, hey, use whatever art, whatever. And then you look at your rubric and you're like, no, you're not. Your rubric is totally opposite of what you're asking the students to do. You just kill them.
We have 3 questions left on our slides. I'm not going to worry about popping them up there, because I think they're really interchangeable. What gets in the way? And I think we're talking about that a lot right now. How do you set up an environment that facilitates creativity? And then how do you assess it? Those are our 3 questions. I want to tell you about, with my friend who is teaching, I think one of the biggest things that she did wrong, or that made her feel so frustrated and encounter failure after failure with her students, poor quality work, is that she left it too wide open. Michael Barr did a great TEDx talk here at SUU about creating the box. We always say, think outside the box, and that's what this last thing that you were talking about says, does something different. But you've got to have a box to start with, and so having clear guidelines and parameters matter, but then leaving it open as well. So having maybe a box that's open, you have structure, and that's actually listed in what parents do. You have a structured environment that has rules and guidelines, but then a part of the rubric that says, push it, tell me more, leave it open.
So if you take a look at the value rubric, one of the jumping in points for this transition would be to take a look at taking risks. If you look at benchmark, the lowest, the starting point, it's that you stay strictly within the guidelines of the assignment. For how many teachers is that an A?
Right.
Yeah, that's the highest one. You did it exactly how I wanted.
Right.
And therefore, I've got nothing to grade you on, so I
Right.
can't complain.
Right, and that's the
Full point.
student's expectations. I've had these interactions. What gives? I did everything you asked, and nothing that I didn't ask.
Well, and what you were saying about rubric and what you need to be assessed on, that's another thing too. When you have an open-ended assignment, how do you make sure that they're encountering what you need them to learn, that you need them to interact with? And I think it's just all how you set it up, that you say, okay, you and I recognize and understand the objective, and then I want to see more. So that is we set the baseline as minimum.
And then the capstone is to actively seek out and follow through on untested, potentially risky directions or approaches to the assignment in the final product.
So Spruce Goose.
So I used to give a grade when I was doing primarily
I was like,
Do you know what that
describe my
means?
life.
I built the airplane.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
so I used to give a grade called the Spruce Goose, and I don't know if did I do Spruce Goose when you were around them days? So I would say I'm going to reserve one time only out of all the grades of anything given that you can advocate for yourself that you did a Spruce Goose, which of course the Howard Hughes airplane, and he tried to build a large wooden airplane, etc. And it worked, and it flew, but not really well. And it's
this
Hallmark,
spectacular
this Hercules airplane
failure.
was a spectacular failure. And so I said, you can reserve something as a spectacular failure, and you can override any grade that you got by spruce goosing it, but you only get one. And so you can apply it judiciously to your best spectacular failure. It was not
justify.
Right? Yeah, and you've got to like write a little reflection that says, okay, here's why this gets the spruce goose. I didn't have very many takers, and when I asked students later, they're like, "What? How can I even try to fail?" And I said, "You don't try to fail. That's not what Howard Hughes was trying to
You
do.
try something amazing."
He was just trying to do something insane." And so that's the thing where, I still, 16 years into this, struggle with that as a goal for students. Go for it.
So is this one with risk taking that, like the spruce goose, there has to be intentionality in it? It can't be an after the fact failure.
Well, maybe they're working on their project and they're going for it and they put the time in and it doesn't work.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not
say,
sure.
okay, I did it, I turned it in, it wasn't successful, but this is what I learned. This is
Well, like your student you mentioned earlier, if I could have done something differently, I would have taken more time in my notes, my
And
biology.
here's what I learned. I'm going to be a better scientist from this day forward because I get it. And I think that's different than the teacher saying, keep a good lab notebook. Knowing it from the inside out means that they kind of push the boundaries. But again, a student who just goes for it. I had one student, and I love this guy to death. He's teaching in Japan right now. He constantly says, "I'm so sorry I made you read that 350-page Norse mythology cyberpunk novel." And I said, "But you had to write it." Because I know I had to write it. I had to get it out of my system. And so I'm
Some
not
people
like
throw up. Some people.
he said, got it done. He was, he didn't take that kind of stuff up when he went to do his master's up at Utah State. It was great, but he was able to articulate, I had to do this and here's why. And it was crazy. And it was not a good assignment, but it was really his sort of high watermark. He kept on bringing me pages and leaving me Post-it notes on my door. I'm sorry, this is 75 pages more than you even asked for. 125 pages more than you asked for. I said, this is way more than I asked for, but I will read it.
Does that mean you read the whole thing?
I read the whole thing. But he went for it. But again, the idea is people are really, really demonstrating creative thinking when some other things in our systems break. When they're like, this is the thing. And so there's a fancy term for this. We even had the guy here. Those are disruptive innovations, where they're kind of coming in and offering alternatives to what's going on. And I'm not 100% sure I even know how yet to grade, assess, give feedback to a student who is genuinely disruptive in a positive, developmental, creative way. Not just like tearing stuff down because they're mad, but really saying, I have a new way that I want to approach this thing that you're asking me to do. It's interesting.
So what are some of your thoughts on the intentionality relative to the organic kind of construction? As I'm thinking about what John was talking about with the Jumpstart class, really starting this project and then getting on fire, which seemed like it wasn't necessarily intentional, but it was great. What are your thoughts on, should people set out to say, I'm going to take some risks in this, or should it just kind of happen?
I think that risk taking, the ability to do that grows and grows. And so you may ask them, and have that intention at the beginning and then pull back as they become better at it and more able to do it. I think that they could probably do that activity again. And do it even better and get in that flow state easier. And so I think having intentionality at the beginning and modeling and doing it alongside them and taking a risk together and then pulling back and letting them go for it. And I wanted to talk about assessment because we don't have a lot of time left, but I love that you said intentionality and then what actually happened. I think that when you're assessing a creative project, you have three components that you use: a proposal, the actual thing itself, and then the artist statement or the justification or the reflection. And that's where you see, okay, so your craftsmanship wasn't as good as I would have hoped, but I can see the reasons why you did it and how you did it. And that right there, the research that went into this, the math that you had to do to get this to happen, and there's a lot of learning that they need to be able to communicate to you and a statement or reflection. So those three components together are assessed rather than just the creative piece itself.
What do you call justification? The artist
Artist statement.
Artist statement. Thank
Yeah. So when I work with elementary children on an artist statement, I have three components: a description, just what you see, and then what I meant, and how I feel. And I think that could translate. It could get more complicated or more complex, but those are the basics. An artist statement can't be just what you see, but that needs to be a part of it, and it can't just be I meant for it to be better, you know. So you have the I feel part, and then what it means as well.
The problem is you're implying some type of an iterative process here.
Yeah.
And again, the structure of our classrooms are usually not like that. It's we do something, you take a test, you screwed up, moving on, you know, and then.
I've been able, and I mean, we all teach different things, so it would look really different, but I've been able to put the iterative process into my class really well by using the writing class process, which is the workshop. And it's so different than a test, and I got the answers right, but you do some work, you propose work, then you do the work and get feedback from your peers before you ever start it. Then you do the work, and then your peers give you in-depth feedback, and then you turn in the final. And so that's just 2 iterations, or proposal, the first iteration, and then the final thing. But that feedback has, on a deep level, has skyrocketed my students' work. It takes more time, they can do less final things, but they have told me they just love it. That's the favorite part of the class, is when they review each other's work. And then I'll review the work after the students have reviewed it, and they'll say, wow, we caught the same things, we saw the same things. And so they're learning to trust themselves and to trust each other versus hanging on what I'm saying.
My experiential learning hat comes on. There's some pretty great stuff in the literature, particularly centered around a guy named Donald Schoen, who talks about reflection in action versus reflection on action. And so I think that there's a couple of things going on. Oftentimes we talk about reflective processes, and we have to. A thing happened, and then you kind of come back and reflect on it. But what he talks about, and this isn't his language, I've started to calling these micro iterations. And so that connects to the reflection in action. And there's a writer that I love, George Saunders, who said this so much better in a recent interview. He says that a lot of times this reflection process is like how optometrists work. Is it better now? Or is it now or now? Or how about this or this, or this or this? And if you can start.
Number 2.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great metaphor. That's why he's a MacArthur genius. But this idea, if we can start to teach that process, we may not be able to get them to do full iterations like we do in some of the larger projects that we have, like when, my agent says rewrite this whole 40 pages. We can't do that in the classroom, but what we can do is this is a better here or here or there or here.
And teach them to trust themselves.
And if they can start getting those micro variations, then they may be able to sort of move towards this kind of thing, which Donald Schoen says this is where professionals become not just real good at stuff, but real good at stuff. And we notice
that iterative process in class on this much smaller scale.
You're modeling these little
every
things.
day, like here's a problem. I mean, I'm visualizing it as a math problem, but yeah, insert your own problem. What do you guys think we should do to solve this problem? Come up with some ideas. Somebody's got to be, anyway, they present their ideas, and then
you try it out.
Tell me why is this a good idea, not a good idea. But that's such a small scale, but it's over and over again every day in class.
Well, I love because you just said the artist statement too. You do it, and then you tell me what you think and how.
Yeah, and then they want me to tell them if it's right or wrong. And I say, well, you tell me if it's right or wrong. And we do it as a class, so the whole class is doing it. Did this work? Why and why not? Most of the time, not on the first one. So then, okay, what do we learn from this? Can we do something else? But this isn't an hour. That's every problem all the time.
Well, and what I love is that you said whole class, because social work is working socially is a huge part of the creative process, and I think having components of individual and social activities in class is really important. Even things public where they're posting on the web, they're creating a blog that they each need to post and respond, not just a discussion board, but something that's out there.
Let me throw a technique that we've been trying in the Edge, and it's working great. great. I know Grant is going to happen. Online discussions have often been thought of as these kind of drive-by activities. Pop, 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 pop. I gave some answers and now I'm off to do other things. We've started moving workshop ideas and workshop processes into these online discussions. Show a little bit of work. Everybody gets a chance to talk about it. And we've noticed some really curious things happen, which is student will post some work, take a look at some other work, pull the work down and replace it with something else.
So they're wanting to improve their.
We don't always know what was there before. We only know that it says Grant Courser put this in and then edited it 14 hours later. But what we're seeing is that the social aspect, work is a social object. So when it's in a little trench that runs between you and the student and it's invisible to everybody else, that's nice or whatever, secret, private. But once it becomes public, then all of a sudden, all the kind of imagined ideas of audience, who's it going to be for, what's going on, what are the implications of me doing this badly, all of those things start coming into play. And I think that gives a better sense of what creativity in groups needs to be. It's like, I got to do this thing where I'm going to be co-creating with other people. And so much of what we do in our lives, whether it's public lives, community lives, professional lives, is about this act of co-creation, which is always negotiated and it's not really. But when students do group work, they always say, I always end up having to do it. And I go, well, you did group work wrong then. You are not allowing this process to emerge where you were able to kind of assess or go back to these things. Your evaluation thing was a problem. If you guys could, as a group, say, we put 10 ideas out, we need to pick one, what are we going to do, group? And what are all the reasons that we need to do this? That's actually a really important creative skill, is to be able to kind of work, because you just, Batman thinks he does work alone, but he does not work alone. And we just have to remember we don't. As much as we like to think that we do, we don't. And it can be working directly with people or working with people who have interacted with our lives in the past and we're thinking about the things that they offer.
I think we're pretty close to time. Do you have any last words?
No, well, creative thinking is huge. And it's huge because when out in the world after school, we are hearing back over and over and over again, where is it? Where's the creativity? And I do think that teachers all the way up and down the line, I'm talking pre-K, it's all the way through into graduate programs, those instructors need to be really thinking about in what ways are they complicit with the kind of assassination of creativity, or they're just sort of actively assisting. Because I believe that all along the chain we may be responsible for what's going on, because again, if we're getting all these little geniuses and somehow we're wringing it out of them because we're trying to do good school, trying to create good systems, I think we have to ask some questions about the system. But I think it's joyful work to be thinking about putting people back in touch with a part of themselves that maybe didn't flourish in the school system for a while. I think it's a blast. But it's hard.
Yep. Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. We appreciate it.
I think we have never done a presentation together.
Oh, you're kidding.
Thank you, Tony, for the
Well,
opportunity.
you are welcome.